Every time I begin enthusiastically educating my friends and captured nemesis about cryptocurrency, one of the first questions they inevitably ask is always about mining. What is it, they ask? How can you mine a Bitcoin? What does it even mean? Among those unfamiliar with the subject, it's a term that causes more confusion than clarity, and it's understandable that they want to know more. After all, you can't mine for dollars or cigarettes if you're in prison. But the term is harkening back to the good old days when you could buy what you needed with a shiny rock called gold. In my last video, I talked about how miners have their machines do some work in order to earn the privilege of adding a block to the blockchain. Blocks are filled with transactions, and the first transaction in every block is called a coin-based transaction. In a coin-based transaction, new coin is created and sent to whatever address the miner chooses. This is how Bitcoin creates new coin, the same way your bank or government would print new bills. Except that Bitcoin will stop creating new coin just before the total number created reaches 21 million. This is why the term mining was chosen. Miners put in the work and unearth new Bitcoin in the process. Unfortunately, this work isn't done with a pickaxe and a strong back. If it were, I'd have my henchmen digging around the clock and I'd be an honest man. No, Bitcoin's work is done through math. And my henchmen suck at math. When I first heard that Bitcoin's work was done through math, I thought, oh, how brilliant! They have computers solve problems for people in order to earn money. That sure is neat. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. It occurred to me then that that seemed really impractical. The computers run a secure hash algorithm known as SHA-256, which is a one-directional algorithm designed to compress data into 256 bits with very few collisions. If that didn't make any sense to you, that means you're normal. What the use of the SHA-256 algorithm means is that you can't take a desired output and work backwards to the input that creates it, which makes it one-directional. The idea that it's compressing data just means that the output is a consistent result given its input. Having few collisions means that it's very unlikely that you'll have two different inputs that have the same output. Think about two different math problems. 8 minus 4 and 1 plus 3. Those are two different math problems that have the same answer. That's a collision. There are different algorithms that have the same properties, and indeed, different cryptocurrencies use different algorithms to tackle the same problem. Litecoin, for instance, uses the scrypt algorithm instead of SHA-256 for mining, much to the same effect. Okay, so miners have their machines running the SHA algorithm because it has all these special properties in an attempt to find an output that looks a certain way. By trying random inputs over and over again, miners search for the nonce, the number that, when hashed along with the unique information that makes up the specific block that they're mining, produces an output that fits the bill. If this is going over your head, don't worry. All it means is that the answer is different every time, and there's no shortcuts to finding it, so you can't cheat. The only way to get to the answer faster is to hash more, which is expensive, especially for one person. Additionally, as people hash more, and as more people hash, the network can make the answer take longer to compute just by making the output have to look a little different. And by having the output have to look a certain way instead of be a specific output, the network doesn't have to know what the answer is that will produce the specified output. Or in other words, it's not guess what number I'm thinking, it's guess a number that goes into this equation that results in a number less than 42, which is a lot more practical. On and on this guessing game goes until someone finds a working answer. Except, unlike in this example, it's impossible to know what number will produce a good result until you try it. But once you find it, it's trivial for everyone to see that your answer solves the problem. The Bitcoin network aims to have this problem solved in about 10 minutes. So, as in our example before, as more people come into the room to guess, you might say, okay, find a number that goes into this equation that results in a number less than 40. And as more and more people come into the room, and as they start to guess more quickly, you keep lowering the number that their result has to be under to keep them guessing for about 10 minutes. This way, a transaction with a reasonable fee should end up in the next block or so, in around 10 minutes. My henchmen that I was talking about before, they're incredibly impatient. If they had to wait more than 10 minutes to see their paychecks get confirmed into a block, they'd start thinking about things like, why does the boss always call us into the room above the Shark Tank to discuss our severance package? Speaking of transaction fees, I get asked about that a lot too. You may ask, why am I paying a transaction fee if the miner's already getting brand new Bitcoin for mining the block? Well, a couple reasons. One big one is that, as I mentioned earlier, one day no new Bitcoin will be created. All of the Bitcoin that will ever exist will already have been mined, and the only reason the miners will have to keep mining is transaction fees. By that time, Bitcoin will be used widely enough that the transaction fees won't go up much if they don't go down instead. Another good argument in favor of transaction fees is that if you need a transaction rushed, for sure put into the next block, you can pay to make it happen. Likewise, if you're shopping online and you don't need the first confirmation to happen immediately, you can pay a very low transaction fee and not sweat when exactly the transaction will get picked up. Okay, so all of that was really technical and maybe a little more than you bargained for. Well, don't worry, that was the worst of it. At this point, you may be thinking, hey, this mining gig doesn't sound like such a bad deal. If my computer does all the work, I can let it math all those numbers while I'm working and come back home to some extra cash. Well, no, not anymore. Unfortunately, the current mining landscape doesn't look quite like it did back when nobody knew about Bitcoin. At this point, there are so many other miners, some with millions invested into mining equipment, even a cutting-edge, state-of-the-art, $20,000 machine would never stand a chance of mining a block on its own. So how do miners mine today? Are they all millionaires? Nope, they band together into mining pools and split the profits. With Bitcoin being worth what it is today, you can split the block reward up between quite a few people and still be making a decent profit for your trouble. If you've got everything configured right. Remember, these machines still use electricity and mining's hard work. You gotta make more money than you're spending keeping the lights on. If you find that you're profiting from mining, you might invest in a computer built specifically to mine cryptocurrencies, called an ASIC, that's faster and more efficient than any home computer you'll ever build, if you can afford one. I'll do a video on ASICs and their impact on the network another day. It's worth noting that the method of mining described here is what's called the proof-of-work method of verifying transactions. One of the biggest weaknesses to the proof-of-work method is how much energy it takes to work. Every new miner that joins the network uses up about as much energy as every other, but more miners doesn't make the network process transactions any better. It makes the network more secure and much more decentralized, but the average user won't notice the difference between 100 and 1,000,000 miners. There are other methods of verifying transactions out there, but I'll save those for another day. At this point, you probably look more glassy-eyed than I do after I get punched in the face by my nemesis, Roid Rage. I'll let you off the hook here, unlike him. Next video, I'll be talking about private keys, public keys, and addresses. If you don't know what any of that stuff is, subscribe to find out. If you think I'm providing a service for the community, leave a like. I still owe some community service hours after that incident where I tried to create real flubber. Don't ask. And if you have any questions, concerns, or insults, leave a comment below. Thanks.